Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soul back in the studio today with another new video on creating journals using vintage books. So if you have been following along, I think this is video number 15. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I hope you'll say hello down in the comments and I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. So today's video is kind of a random one. I started this series with 5 Little Peppers. I have made some previously like this where I would just kind of show a final flip through and that sort of thing. And then decided I needed to do one from the very beginning for those of you who are brand new to this craft. So this one, I've gone through all the steps in the order that I normally work, including my kind of the last working on these was using some scrap busting and creating these strips to reinforce pages that were maybe a little fragile to turn. I've, finished up pockets and now started putting things inside. I jumped from this one, which is pretty close to done. I can still add some things, to one with a different type of binding. And that's the one that I'm working on now. This was my sample. I'm working on a much larger version. And in my last video, I showed where I was at on this one and kind of my steps forward. So I've put it aside while I do something to the cover and then we'll bind it. In the meantime, I want to clean off my desk just because it's kind of driving me crazy. So I have sort of, because I'm kind of a methodical worker, I like to, do certain steps in my journals, even when I have a bunch going. And when it's time to clean off my desk, the first thing that I do is kind of sort what is there. And I go by size normally. So if you watched my previous video on what I did with these kind of scraps, I haven't sorted these yet, but I will do that. And I have a video on what I'll do with these. So this has already been taken away from my table. And I'll put it aside for now. If you did not watch the previous kind of scrap busting video, there were 2 things that I did. This one I have not finished, and I probably am not going to do it in this video still. But I took the skinniest strips and glued them together, layering them on top of each other, and then just used my sewing machine and stitched them. And then you can add, color to them if you want. We'll maybe play with these again later. The other thing for the wider strips is kind of creating these unfinished yet little packets of scraps. So I'll work on these at another time, but I have all the long skinny strips in these 2 containers. I have some more here that I need to add. And some of them may be thin enough that I should add to that other pile because they might get glued together. So I'm gonna add them to that bag. So I've kind of gotten rid of the long strips, and now I have all of these just random pieces. Now I also had some larger things because I was like this. I was also taking apart some books, and sometimes a page might be a little torn or fragile, more than I want to put into a journal and then have to repair that much. So those go in my scrap pile too. So I kind of sort them by size. And the first thing I pull out is anything that is blank, like these. They don't have anything on them. They're from, maybe the beginning before the table of contents in a book. You get, sometimes they're thin, sometimes they're thicker. This was floating around on my desk, a tea stain envelope. I might do something with that. This was actually the book I was going to use to do my gluing on so that I don't hurt my mat. And when I pulled it out, it had this nice blank page. It has text on the other side, but this is good writing space. So I pulled that out. I pulled it off of here and kept that separate too. So I kind of go by size. These I've already been playing around with. So I'll just kind of show you. Take these out. These were also pieces that were in this pile. And they're usable. These were blank. So these are nice writable sheets that I can just tuck into a journal. So I'll put those to the side. This was another small one that had been folded. It probably had been trimmed off of a larger piece. So that is also good just to stick in a journal. And then I like to take other pieces that you might like to use for collage. So I had this nice little dictionary page. It's thinner paper, so it's really nice to use for collage. And then part of a map, that was a big enough piece to utilized for something. So I have that, and then this piece of music paper. So since they were larger, I kind of leave them larger and clean up the edges. They were maybe pages that had torn. So I straighten them all up, clean those up, and those can get tucked into a journal too. And then that way, the person that ends up with the journal will have some different papers to also maybe embellish for their pockets or that sort of thing. Then I end up with the end here, and actually these two pieces aren't too bad either. These were from a really small book, so I could actually maybe put these in too, because I just think they're so sweet. They're from a little tiny dictionary and from another little, it looks like German book. So I'll put those aside too, that can be included. So then I'm down to just kind of really torn things. And so I'm going to use these today for some collage, and I'll show you what I ended up making that will go into those journals that eventually will be in my Etsy shop. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to just take this piece and I'm just going to collage on it. So if you've ever made a masterboard, what that is just taking something that's blank, could be any kind of piece of paper. I like to use something like this with patina on it. The other thing that I like to use, or anything like this, is ledger paper, graph paper, anything with lines. This is some vintage ledger paper, and this is really big, so this could make some really large masterboards. I didn't really like that this had been started writing on, so I can actually collage over this. And then what you end up with is a collaged one side and then good writable space on the other side. So grab either something plain or something with lines. This is a digital collage. I don't have it for sale because I actually purchased a digital kit from someone else that had all these, and so I cannot transform them and resell them in my Etsy shop, but I did them for my own use. I shrunk them down to sizes that I could cut up for the backs of journaling cards. So I can also take this collage on this back side. Then when I cut it up, I have all of these cute journaling cards that are kind of lined, writable space on one side and collage on the other side. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to take this blank piece and figure out, this is kind of a mess down here, but I can maybe glue that down on itself. It's going to get collaged on one side anyway. I'm just going to take a glue stick. I'm using Yoo-Hoo. You can use your favorite, whatever your favorite brand is. And I may end up cutting this off anyway, but we'll at least try to get that put back down. And then I just want to look at which side maybe I want to collage on. I usually like to have the side with the most patina, but this is in better shape. I could collage over this, and then this is probably going to get cut off anyway because it's kind of thin. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to use this book just to glue on. And you're just going to kind of collage. They can be large pieces, small pieces, whatever you want them to be. If I have a lot of large pieces, maybe I have one where all my things are a little larger, and then smaller, more tiny pieces on a smaller thing that I'm going to cover. So this actually would fit all the way across this, but I might want them a little smaller than that because they're going to end up getting cut up. So I'm just gonna, and maybe I want this side, if I want it to be kind of a neutral background, and even though that's really pretty, maybe I want to keep it as a background, so I'll keep the more neutral side showing. And you don't have to put a ton of thought into where you know, you're going to be cutting them up anyway into smaller cards. So this is just a nice way to use up your scraps and not feel like you're wasting anything. So maybe I put, you know, this is going to be from a different card. And you can turn what direction they go. They don't have to be, you know, readable or anything, because they're just for background. So maybe this one here. And when I do them in books that I'm going to sell like this, maybe I don't decorate to a theme or anything like that, because it's going to go to another person and they're going to put their creativity onto it. So I really try to think of it as, you know, neutral backgrounds that I'm creating for someone else to add to. And I don't want that edge on there. Oops. This is a good thing, a good place to use papers that are fragile. A lot of times I have papers that I really like, but they're not good for journal pages, because when you fold them, they crack. And so that's nice to use for things like this. That way you don't feel like you're wasting anything. Maybe here, since I tore that. Okay, then you're going to do that with all of your scraps and all of your blank pieces, and just get them covered, and you have a nice blank side. So when I'm working on these, they end up, you know, not as flat. They're a little wonky. So I use my iron. I always have it set up in my room, and I iron these. Not too much, because you don't want to have the glue separate, but just enough to finish drying it and get it nice and flat. Okay, now you can see that that's nice and flat. The other thing it does is it really kind of makes it nice and sturdy. So this is kind of my masterboard that I would then cut up. Now I can do a couple more steps to it now, or I kind of prefer to do it after I've cut them apart, and you'll see why here in a second. But I'm gonna go over to my guillotine, and I'm gonna just kind of cut this into what I think are nice size tags for my journals. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've cut these into just random size cards. And then the next thing I want to do is get them into looking like tags. So this one is roughly 3.5 by, I don't know, close to 5 maybe. And so for this one, I think I'm going to just round the corners. This is my We Are Memory Keeper corner punch, and it has 3 different sizes. I kind of correlate the size I'm going to use to the size of the card. So this one, I think I'll do the medium size, which is 7mm, and just clip those corners. And then the other thing that I like to do is, let me get all of these ready here so I can do this next step. This one's kind of an odd size, more square. So I could trim it and make it look a little bit better by, you know, doing that. But I think I'll leave that for the next person to change if they want. So we'll just cut these off. And then these two, I'm going to actually use, I'll do the bottoms. Oh, is that the bottom or the top? Which way do I want it to go? I think I want it to go this way. So I'm just doing the bottoms. This one, I guess, can go this way. And then I have this other punch that's a tag punch. And I haven't used it in a while. I don't even know what brand it is. So I'll see if I can find it and then put a link down below. But it's nice because I think I got it at Hobby Lobby, actually. It's nice because you can have the tag be any length that you want. It's only cutting the top of it. So it has 3 different sizes, 2.5, 2 inch, and 1.5. So depending on the narrowness, it just changes the design. So, and it punches the hole in it for you too. So I hadn't used this in a while, and when I was looking for my punches, I found it, and that's kind of nice. So that gives you just kind of that decorative top. We'll see what it does on the one that I had already. So that's just kind of cute. They're like little tags. Okay, so I'm gonna set that aside. And then the next thing I wanna do is, depending on what papers, you know, I was just using on my scraps, so they might have a little be a little contrasty. And you don't have to do this step, but I just kind of like to. It kind of helps pull them together as a cohesive thing. And again, this is just background. You don't have to do this step, because if I just put this into the journal, the next person is going to take this as a base and then add to it, you know, put their own theme or decorate it or whatever. But I like to use my Distress Oxide Vintage Photo and just get rid of the white edges. That's just me. So you don't have to do this step. You can do a different color if you like, something not as dark, something darker. And I don't really worry about this side because it already has patina. And I can maybe get a clean sheet here. And then just by doing a little bit around the edge, it just kind of pulls all of the papers together and makes it a little bit more cohesive as a background. And then you can still add whatever you want. I'm going to do another step to that, but I'm going to go ahead and do this to all of these before I move on here. Okay, so you can see by just kind of grunging those up a little bit, it just made them a little more cohesive from the different colors of papers. So the other thing that you can do, again, you can do this or not, but I'm going to go ahead and do this step, is add some stamping onto this. Actually, these two, I want to punch a hole, but I can do that in a sec. So let's see. This one is just kind of a map, so maybe I'll use a little parts of that. And you can use some archival, some permanent ink is good. So maybe I just do a little of that on that one. Oops. And then maybe something with some ledger looking on it would be fun, and just do now. I have this one that I could do if I wanted to add lines. This is like a note paper. This is from Tim Holtz, Stampers Anonymous. It is called School Desk. I could do this maybe on the back of something and have lines. I don't think I want to do that, but you could. I actually made a stamp, a lined stamp, using corrugated cardboard. So if you want to draw lines on the backs of these, you can, just with a ruler and a pen. But I've taken corrugated cardboard and just take one of the layers off and then use a couple of layers of gesso so that it kind of gives you a better coverage. And let's see, maybe I'll do this one just for fun to show you. The ink goes on better if you use it just on the cardboard. It soaks in and it doesn't print very well. So let's go this way so I can kind of get it lined up. They're kind of blurry because I moved, but you can kind of see, then you get little lines on the back that you can write on. The other thing that I've done is taken linoleum blocks, these rubber blocks, to create your own stamp so that I have some kind of wobbly lines. And then that's kind of fun too. You can stamp with that. So you can make your own if you don't have that. Now my fingers are filthy, so baby wipes are a very handy thing to have on your table. So let's see. And then you could, these are still a little bit wet. You could, you know, stamp a few more things. Let's see what else I have. This is another one from Tim Holtz Ledger Script. Oops, it still has ink. Apparently there's still ink on this one, a little bit. Okay, so that is just kind of something you can do, and you can do that in a color. I just did it in black, and I should be using these little blocks. Would help, but I'm being too lazy. It would keep me from getting ink all over my fingers. Okay, so once you have those, you need to dry them before you touch them or they smear. So let me... Okay, so now I have my tags. So you can add to these, add like a little sentiment, a little focal point, that sort of thing. So I want to go ahead though and add a little eyelet. Now these larger ones I'm using because the hole that was created is so big. So I'm going to use a larger one, and it came, I think they're more for leather work, but it came with this little kind of a washer thing. And I'm going to use my Crocodile. This is from what We Are Memory Keepers, and so it punches your hole. I'll show you on the other one. It punches your hole, and then it sets your eyelet. All in one thing. So I need to do this one, and then I'll use a smaller one. Where did my washer go? For those two, and then if you have one of these, if you don't, you can just punch a hole and use an eyelet, or not use an eyelet, use a reinforcement or something like that. But I'm going to use, these are the ones that I rusted previously. This has two sides for punching your hole, a 3/16 inch and an eighth inch. So you'll use whichever size to correlate with the size you're using of your little eyelet. So if I'm going to use the larger one, let's see. This is a larger one for the larger tags. So, oops. You can actually see through the hole, and I need to find where my top is. I think I'll make this my top. And then I'm just going to eyeball it, but you can measure if you want. and then put this here. And then there's also different settings for how big your thing is. And I never know really which one goes with which, but we're gonna try this one. And you just want to make sure it's centered. And then you have your eyelet on there. So I'm going to do this one, have the top be the top. Okay. And then just add, I keep a little drawer of just random little things, scraps. And that's not grungy enough for me, so I'm gonna do that. And this way you can change that if you want, or use my grungy thread. And then maybe some lace. And then what else do we have in here? This is some silk, sari silk. And actually that's kind of thick. So let's do this. And there you have some cute beginnings to your tags. And I could, you know, once I get a bunch of these made, maybe I'll go back and go through my little embellishments. But for now, I have nice background started. I don't have to put too much thought into it. And then they're ready to go for the card. So I want to finish making out of these scraps, collaging them just to get rid of them. But this is just an easy way to get some backgrounds, have a bunch of cards, just do a bunch of different sizes and just have them mass made, ready for when you do have them to put in a journal. But you know, when you're making all these journals and you're making all these scraps, I have so many journals going that I'm going to definitely use up all these cards and probably need more. So I'm going to continue making my masterboards, cutting them up and getting at least the bases, the backgrounds ready. And then I'll have a stash when I'm ready to put them in a journal. And then that way, if I have a certain theme, then I can use the embellishments and that sort of thing that go with the particular theme. And then it kind of fits each journal. I don't like to go and maybe finish these all the way, because then sometimes I end up with some that just never seem to fit into a journal. But that's where we're at. So between that and then, you know, I still need to do something with these, which these could also be added to masterboards and different things too. But I'm going to go ahead and continue and make some of my strips. You know, I could end up even using some of these and adding them as decoration to a card, you know, and then adding the focal point, a little saying. So it's kind of fun to just sit and mass make all of this stuff. That way it's ready to go. You have at least part of it done. So I hope that you enjoy that little masterboard tip if you've never done that. And we'll continue on with the next video. We'll see where we're at. I'm just going to continue working on these. So have a great rest of your day, and I go make something. Bye.